What is going on, FA Nation? John Impemba here, bringing you your NFL DFS Week 9 DraftKings preview. Riding solo here for the DraftKings Week 9 show, but nonetheless, we are here. Go position by position and get you guys ready to take down your NFL DFS contest here. Again, we're looking at the DraftKings main slate. We got 12 games on the main slate here this weekend, and it's a pretty exciting matchups to take advantage of. Again, we go position by position. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Likely be a little bit of a quicker show with it just me riding solo here today. But nonetheless, let's get into it. And start off at the quarterback position. Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, your top three price quarterbacks here. Hurts, obviously, with the top matchup going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Hurts himself last week, 3 rushing touchdowns, now 5 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, continuing to carry his fantasy upside. But this is obviously a matchup that we could see him just throw all over Jacksonville as well. If you're looking to spend up for Hurts, certainly don't see a problem getting to him going up against Jacksonville at home this week. Lamar Jackson, for me, again, I think he's going to go a little bit overlooked. Matchup here against the Denver Broncos. Denver's defense is a little bit tougher, obviously, than dealing with Jacksonville for Hurts. So more people going the Hurts route. But there's nothing wrong with going Lamar. Again, 24 fantasy points last week, 289 yards and 2 scores against a tough Cleveland defense in Cleveland. So should give you no real concerns, I think, about the Denver Broncos defense of Denver having to travel on the road this week. And then Josh Allen at home. Yes, historically, he has struggled against Miami. 2 touchdowns each of the last 2 weeks. We know he has some rushing upside. Loving to see the development of Keon Coleman. They have Amari Cooper there. Dalton Kincaid starting to come around. Khalil Shakur is still being productive. They might get Curtis Samuel back, and that running game is on point. So I really think the Bills' offense is starting to click at the right time. They're home here against Miami. Certainly don't mind spending up for Josh Allen if you're looking at those top 3 guys. Nothing against Jaden Daniels. We know what kind of upside he has, obviously. Not going to play Jordan Love. There's some questionable whether or not he's going to even suit up. It's going to be some bad weather in Green Bay this weekend. I do like Joe Burrow at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. Sure, doesn't look like T. Higgins is going to suit up this week here, but still, Jamar Chase, we saw Mike Gesicki, you might see Jermaine Burton step up. I like Burrow in this spot against the Raiders at home. Other mid-tier options that I think we're looking at, Kirk Cousins should be pretty popular. Bad Dallas defense. Cousins coming off 4 passing touchdowns. Sure, maybe a bit concerning that 8 of his 14 touchdowns this season have come only against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but this certainly feels like a spot where Cousins could take advantage of that matchup. And obviously on the flip side, at a similar price point, you have Dak Prescott. Yes, the Cowboys offense has largely struggled, but if this game ends up going back and forth, we've seen obviously Atlanta's defense struggle to defend the pass. Certainly still have CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, Jake Ferguson, so there's certainly options that can catch the football for Prescott to have a productive week here. In the value tier, Bo Nix is certainly interesting, coming off of 3 touchdowns last week, passing, 1 rushing against Carolina. The Baltimore Ravens defense has not been very good this year. Bo Nix, with his ability to run, as we've seen in a couple of matchups, and then last week throw, certainly gives them a pretty interesting ceiling at under $6,000. Also think we take a look again at Jameis Winston here. Starting last week against Baltimore, 334 and 3 touchdowns. He's going to be a gunslinger. We know that. Chargers defense has been okay, but they're traveling on the road. And you know that Winston's just going to drop back and pass a ton. So don't mind giving him a shot at $5,400. And then we talked about this on the Fantasy Alarm Show, myself and Andrew Cooper. But you have to scroll all the way down here to find the Carolina Panthers starting quarterback. Bryce Young expected to start this week. If he gives you exactly what you got against Denver and you get 15.5 fantasy points, that's an absolute win at $4,400. The Saints, their secondary is all sorts of beat up right now. So, whatever you think of Bryce Young, and even last week's performance was so-so, 65% completion percentage and 224 yards and 2 scores. If we can get something like that again out of Bryce Young, it's going to open up so much more for our lineups, especially given where you're likely going to stack with Bryce Young. You could play a naked Bryce Young if you wanted to as well at $4,400 and just kind of build around other pairings and go for some higher price options. But I think in tournaments at home against New Orleans, Bryce Young is kind of interesting for me here. So, I'm willing to give him an opportunity. Again, I understand in week 1 in New Orleans, he was terrible, kind of started the downslide for him. even if he gives you 12 fantasy points like he did in week 1 at $4,400, though, it's going to pay off that price tag. So, I think Bryce Young, believe it or not, is in our player pool this week at the quarterback position. Running back is loaded. I wrote down a list of guys, and I kept on coming across like, yeah, I play this guy. Yeah, I play this guy. I don't think you can find a bad pairing. It all depends on where you're going with your value. If you want to spend up, Henry, Barkley, Kyren Williams, Alvin Kamara, Bijan Robinson, Kenneth Walker, James Cook. Those are the guys 7K and above that I'm just sort of locking into my player pool, and I'll let the optimizer gods decide which I'll end up playing. If you had me lock in one player, the obvious selection here is Alvin Kamara, cover of the playbook this week. Again, the target share is ridiculous. The receptions obviously help in PPR. It's getting Derek Carr back. This is the best matchup in football to run on. We saw them against Carolina in week 1. He had 22 fantasy points there. He had the 4-touchdown game against Dallas the week after that. I said on the Fantasy Lineup show, it would not stun me if Alvin Kamara had 3 touchdowns in this game. Sure, Taysom Hill being active and likely being used with no Jamal Williams and no Kendre Miller in the red zone is a slight concern, but I think Alvin Kamara is set for a big, big day here. So I do like him at 7,800. But again, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Kyren Williams, Alvin Kamara, Bijan Robinson, Kenneth Walker, James Cook. Put them in your player pool, hit the optimizer button, let them decide where your lineup builds go. I think all of those guys are in really great spots. We go down into the mid-tier. Devin Achane, 10 carries for 97, 15 for 77. He's back. He's healthy. He's looking good. Good matchup to run the football on Buffalo as well. We saw back in week 2, 22 carries for 96 yards. He also had 7 catches. Buffalo just allowing running backs to catch football on them all season long here. Tua Tagovailoa being back certainly helps this offense. So definitely like Achane there. Could be a Chuba Hubbard legacy game. There's rumors that he could be the guy traded by the Carolina Panthers. The NFL trade deadline is on Tuesday. Hubbard's in the final year of his deal. They didn't activate Jonathan Brooks this week. I think that's because they want to showcase Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard to potential suitors. Hubbard's going to be the easier guy to trade given the contract situation. I think he gets a big workload. Week 1 wasn't great, against the Saints here, but they were down so much they weren't going to run the football. But we've seen the volume and the touches be there for him. So I like Hubbard at 65. David Montgomery, again, it's supposed to be pretty steady rain from the forecasting. It's, so which sometimes make it harder to throw the football. We know Montgomery's going to get opportunities in the red zone, and they may just be forced to run the ball 25, 30 times in this game due to the weather. That type of matchup in game type flow fits David Montgomery well. Tournaments, I don't mind that. DeAndre Swift has looked fantastic, 18 for 129, touchdowns now in 4 straight weeks. The touch volume's been incredible, 16, 21, 17, and 18 carries over the last 4 weeks. Arizona boasts another really great matchup for DeAndre Swift to take advantage of. So hard not to like that spot for Swift at $6,400. And then we get down into some of our value plays. Raheem Mostert found the end zone. It wasn't obviously an efficient day for him, but 2 rushing touchdowns because when they get in that red zone area, he's like their David Montgomery, Achane's and Jahmyr Gibbs. That's the type of style of offense they're going to run. There's a reason he had like 23 rushing touchdowns last year. If you get in the red zone with this Miami Dolphins offense, Mostert's going to be the guy touching the football. I like this spot for him here just for some rushing touchdown upside. Chase Brown's going to be super chalky, $5,900. Zach Moss is doubtful to play. We already know he's been used this season. He has touchdowns in 2 of the last 3 games. The Raiders defense is terrible. You think the Bengals go up big? Chase Brown could get a heavy workload here just running out the clock. So $5,900 for him. I think Nick Chubb could be a pretty interesting play. Yes, the Chargers' run defense has been pretty decent here. Absolutely love seeing Chubb get 16 carries, though, last week. 16. Sure, 3.3 yards per carry isn't great, but that volume is good. We know he's a good running back. $5,800. He could take one big run, break out, get back into the flow of things, and he's paying off that price tag in spades. So in tournaments, I definitely think that there's some good value here behind Nick Chubb. Tracy, I'm stunned to see Devin Singletary priced higher than him, coming off Tracy with 20 carries for 145 and a score. It's very clear that he is the lead running back now in this offense. And the fact that he cleared concussion protocol should be all systems go for us this week against Washington here for Tyron Tracy at $5,500. And then your new value play of the week. It's looking like Julius Chestnut at min price $4,000. I keep scrolling, I can't even find his name. I'm going to type it in here. Tony Pollard did not practice all week. They don't have Tajay Spears. We might get Julius Chestnut as the only running back active, or healthy rather, and the lead running back for Tennessee this week. We know the Patriots' run defense has been really, really bad this season, allowing the third most fantasy points to the position. So, regardless of what we've seen out of Julius Chestnut here, it is looking like Chestnut's a guy that could start and be the featured back for the Titans this week. So that alone at $4,000 would be meriting worth a play in DFS formats this week. At the wide receiver position, again, I think any of these top guys are good. CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, A.J. Brown, depending on where you're going with your stacks or where your value leads you, I think you can play all three of them. I'm on Ross St. Brown. I'm a bit concerned, again, because of that weather. Cooper Kupp is more interesting now if Puka Nacua sits. We saw, obviously, when Nacua went out earlier this season, Kupp got the 22 targets against the Lions. If he ends up being the number one target this week without Nacua, the volume's going to be there. Malik Neighbors lit up the Giants in that first matchup, 10 for 127 in a score on 18 targets. $7,500 for him is a bit pricey, obviously, but the target volume continues to be there. Tyreek Hill, 9 targets last week, 6 for 72 with the first week back of Tua, so they're right back in lockstep. Could possibly see him with a big game this week against the Buffalo Bills. A mid-tier grouping, Isaiah Flowers against Denver, I think is fine. Devonta Smith against Jacksonville. Drake London's going to be super popular in cash games against the Dallas Cowboys, if you wanted to go there. JSN without DK Metcalf. Chris Olave is another play I think you can use in tournaments and cash games. Last week, 8 for 107 on 14 targets and gets Derek Carr back this week at $6,100. Love Darnell Mooney in tournaments. He's capable of the long touchdown catch, getting the Dallas matchup at $6,000. Other wide receivers, I think we can look. Lad McConkey coming off the big game last week. It feels like he might be chasing some, but the target volume's been really good for him, $5,600. I like Jalen Waddle, 4 for 45 last week. I think is just sort of a floor for him. I do think there's a ceiling potential with Tua back. 55 is certainly too cheap, and you could probably use him in some cash games. Cortland Sutton, if you're going to go with Bo Nix this week, you got to get Sutton in your lineup. 8 for 100 on 11 targets. He's the guy. He's got to get the football to him in this matchup against Baltimore if they're going to be throwing. Really good price tag at $5,400. Mari Cooper's the number one guy, but Keon Coleman's looked really good over the last couple of weeks. 14 targets, 5 for 70 in a score, coming off 4 for 125. They took him in the second round to be their guy. They traded for Amari Cooper to allow him to develop a little bit more. He's looked really good in the 2 weeks that Cooper's been there. Keon Coleman, nice tournament play at $5,400. Jacoby Myers, again, number one wide receiver now in this team outside of Brock Bowers, 6 for 52 and a touchdown last week. The target volume is definitely going to be there without Devontae Adams. Really good play and upside here for Jacoby Myers at $5,300. Going down to some more value, Jalen Tolbert really didn't have a great game last week, but we know that he's had that in him. If Dallas can flip the script on their offense, Atlanta certainly can give up the yardage. Tolbert at 51, certainly interesting. Cedric Tillman's price still really hasn't moved at all, $4,300 for him. 7 catches, 99 yards, and 2 scores after he goes 8 for 81 the week prior. It's very clear they're letting the kid play after the trade of Amari Cooper, and Jameis Winston, certainly a guy that can throw the ball downfield. Quentin Johnson's expected to be back for the Chargers this week. Obviously, he had those touchdowns earlier in the year, has since missed some time due to injury. If he's back on the field and healthy, it could be a week for him against Cleveland. Giving Justin Herbert a second option to catch the football. And then we go to the value tier. Noah Brown's the number 2 receiver in Washington, gets this Giants defense. Mason Tipton's kind of interesting. Andrew Cooper pointed out that he's sort of taking in the spot that Rashid Shaheed filled. So if you think that there's some target volume to go to him with Olave and Carr back, I think you could look at Tipton at $4,000. Kayshon Boutte, I think, is interesting. If you end up seeing Drake May back in the lineup, Boutte nearly scored. He got tackled at the one that set up that game-winning rushing touchdown by Ramondre Stevenson last week. He's made some plays, could be on the field for a bigger snap share. Boutte, super talented kid at LSU, kind of fell a little bit out of favor due to injury at the end of his LSU tenure. But if Drake May's the starting quarterback, I think Boutte is going to be someone on the field that they look to connect with in tournaments. Coker is going to be your value chalk play. Again, 4 for 78 and a touchdown last week, just $3,600 rather. If you're going with Bryce Young, Xavier Legette, we'll see what his status is going to be for this week. But Jalen Coker, someone that I think is going to be interesting. And then a sneaky dart throw play here. Looking for the number 2 wide receiver. Everybody played Yossi Voss last week. He didn't have any catches. Obviously, Gesicki had the big week, but it's shaping up like T. Higgins is not going to play. Jermaine Burton played 41% of the offensive snaps. This is another kid that is super, super talented. He just has some maturity issues. They talked about that going into the year. He was like missing meetings, sleeping through meetings. They're in week 9 now. He's been in an NFL locker room for 9 weeks. He's been in practices. He's been in meeting rooms here. If they feel like he is ready to go, he has some really potential game-breaking upside. Obviously Jamar Chase is the clear number 1, but if this guy's playing 41% last week, that number bumps up 50-60% of offensive snaps this week at 3,100. I'm going to throw him in some lineups. Again, that's almost a min-price play at wide receiver for a guy in a great passing offense that has a ton of offensive talent. Nobody is ever doubting the talent of Jermaine Burton. It's always been maturity levels. It's always been off the field stuff. So I'm kind of interested. I think it's a boom-bust play. He could very well just give you a 1 for 41 again, like he did in week 8. We saw this there. 47 yards, he has 2 catches. 1 for 47 yards, 1 for 41 yards. What's that tell you? They take deep shots downfield with this guy. I don't hate it. I really don't. If he's going to start playing more snaps, moving forward here with T. Higgins out of the lineup, I think that there could be setting him up for T. Higgins to move on next year. Obviously, he's on that franchise tag. Maybe Burton's the next man up in that scenario. So $3,100 Jermaine Burton in tournaments as a dart throw. The tight end position, you don't need to, be too smart with it. Brock Bowers, Cincinnati's been terrible against tight ends. Their secondary is not great. Bowers getting a whole lot of volume. If you can afford him, and there's plenty of value to afford him, Bowers makes a whole lot of sense, as does David Njoku. Again, ton of volume here. Touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. He's effectively, their number 1 or number 2 wide receiver now, going up against the Chargers. Really like Kyle Pitts. 4 for 91 and 2 touchdowns last week. Gotta love the target volume the last few weeks here as well. Dallas just overall struggling with all the defensive injuries that they're dealing with in their secondary. Taysom Hill is the GPP tournament dart of the week here because he's listed as a tight end, but we know they're mostly going to use him as a running back. And they're going to use him in the red zone as a running back. More likely than not, he's going to get some red zone carries. We get a week like this at $3,800 where he rushes for 2 touchdowns because they get inside the 5 and they go wildcat with Taysom Hill. He's going to pay it off. Again, they don't have a backup running back this week. Jamal Williams is out. Kendrick Miller is out. Yes, Alvin Kamara is going to handle a lot of the workload, but we know they love using Taysom Hill in red zone packages. It's the Carolina Panthers. Taysom is likely to break one and likely to find the end zone this week at $3,800. I could see him actually being kind of popular, as interesting as that sounds in tournaments. Hunter Henry, I like if we think that there's going to be Drake May at quarterback. Mark Andrews continues to be pretty good. Again, another touchdown, 4 touchdowns over the last 3 weeks. Even though he's not getting a full snap share, still a good matchup against Denver. Ertz is getting a high target volume for Jaden Daniels, so we have to like that and respect that against the Giants here this week. So there's some good options. If you want some value plays, there's no Dallas Goedert again. So Cal Katera, 3 for 58 last week. Long catch of 28 is fine. It's a good matchup against Jacksonville. Mike Gesicki, I think, could be popular this week. Everybody's chasing last week, 7 for 73. Raiders, again, a good matchup for tight ends. And there's no T. Higgins, so Gesicki certainly could find himself as an option. And then we get to the punt play here. Noah Fant injured himself at practice late on Friday, ruled out, which brings us to A.J. Barner, 4th-round draft pick, 2 catches for 34 yards last week, likely in line now to start as a starting tight end, $2,600, 100 above min. Barner could be that punt tight end if you're just looking to spend down here and so you can spend up elsewhere. Should get the snap share. He played 40% of the snaps last week as it is. He might get all the tight end snaps this week. So $2,600 for A.J. Barner, a bit interesting here. And then we'll go to defense. There's only 3 that I like this week. Eagles against Jacksonville. We know they can get after the quarterback. Jacksonville's down all their top wide receivers. They're even, even Bigsby's a little bit banged up here. So give me the Eagles at 3,100 and really just set and lock them in. I don't think we need to get too cute with it, but I also don't mind the Patriots here. I think they could have some momentum building after their win last week. They're a better defense than we've seen. They have a lot of talent on the defensive side of the football. They have guys that can turn the football over. They have guys that can get after the quarterback. I know we haven't seen it. This has not been a typical Patriots defensive season so far. They're usually good at a couple of defensive touchdowns during the year. Again, haven't gotten any of those yet, but Mason Rudolph quarterbacking an offense that might have Julius Chestnut as their lead running back, down to just Calvin really to catch the football. There's a lot of things that could line up here for New England's defense at 3K. Again, I'd rather play the Eagles. The Patriots are there. And then the punt defense, I am not afraid of Jaden Daniels. The Giants, they're right up there in the NFL in defensive sacks. You just see these sack numbers. They had 5 sacks against Daniels in week 2. I get it. They haven't put up a ton of great points, but they are home. They get after the quarterback. $2,300. If he gives you 5 fantasy points at $2,300, that's really not terrible. So, and if they limit the scoring even more, maybe they get you 7 to 8. That's going to pay it off. So, Giants defense at $2,300. That works for me. So, let's build a lineup here. Let's get to the point of the show where we do this. Generally, Bender's got his lineup build, so I'll build one for us and see what we're going to go with. Quarterback, let's go Kirk Cousins. Running back, Alvin Kamara. And in the mid-tier, let's go with Chase Brown. Wide receivers, we'll go Drake. Actually, let's go Drake London. We'll have CeeDee Lamb be the comeback in that stack. Defense, Eagles. Tight end, I'm going to go Barner still. I'm going to take my 4,350 Chestnut at the flex. That gives us 4,700. Let's see. We'll go Tillman here. So Cousins, Kamara, Brown, London, Lamb, Tillman, Barner, Chestnut in the Eagles defense. So we're using a couple of value plays. We're stacking the Atlanta-Dallas game. We're using Kamara with Chase Brown, and we have $400 left over for our example lineup. Again, we're going to have the NFL DFS playbook out for everybody. The dartboard, Bender's value and contrarian corner video are out on the Fantasy Alarm YouTube page. Example lineups will be out on Sunday. Make sure you tune into the Fantasy Alarm show on SiriusXM Sunday morning from 10 to 11 with Bender and Andrew Cooper. Then myself and Andrew Cooper here on the Fantasy Alarm YouTube channel from 11 to 12, getting you guys ready for your NFL Week 9. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button. If you're not yet a member of the Fantasy Alarm family, we got an awesome deal going on. Not only do we have the 7-day free trial, you can scan that QR code right there on the screen, but we also extended our Halloween sale. You get 50% off the All-Pro Monthly Package for the rest of the NFL season. That's fantasyalarm.com/scary, promo code SCARY. So 50% off your monthly subscription through the Super Bowl here with promo code SCARY. Scan that QR code right there on the screen. Appreciate you all tuning in this week, everybody. Good luck, and we'll catch you on Sunday.